It was her first night, and his touch set her soul on fire. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into the story. It was her first night at the hospital, and Anna could already feel the weight of the responsibility settling heavily on her shoulders. She had been a nurse for only a few months, but tonight, it was different. Tonight, she was assigned to care for someone who was no ordinary patient. The man lying motionless in the bed before her was none other than Grant Carter, a billionaire whose name had once been splashed across every major news outlet. A car crash had left him in a coma for nearly a year, and now he was a shell of the man he used to be, barely clinging to life. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled the air as Anna walked into the private suite, her heart racing. She took a moment to compose herself before approaching his bedside. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the foredrip, careful not to disturb the wires and tubes that kept him alive. His face was pale, his body still and unresponsive, but there was something about him that made Anna hesitate. A strange feeling washed over her. It wasn't just that he was a patient, there was a quiet power in his presence, even in his vulnerable state. She couldn't explain it, but she knew that this would be different. As Anna gently wiped his forehead with a cool washcloth, she spoke to him, even though she knew he couldn't hear her. "I don't know why I'm talking to you," she murmured softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I guess I just don't want you to be alone." She paused, wondering if he could somehow feel her presence. Maybe it was foolish to talk to someone who might never wake up, but she couldn't help herself. It felt like the right thing to do. She continued with her routine, moving from one task to the next, adjusting his sheets, checking his vitals, making sure he was comfortable. But no matter how many times she checked, no signs of life came from him. He remained still, his chest rising and falling with the rhythm of the machines. Anna tried to push away the nagging thought that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't cut out for this. She had only taken the job because she needed the money, but now that she was here, standing beside a man whose life hung by a thread, she wondered if she was strong enough to handle it. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. "You're a fighter," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "I'll be here, no matter what. Just, don't give up." As she finished her shift that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that something important had just started. A small spark of hope had been ignited, though she couldn't explain why. She was just a nurse, after all, and he was a man with wealth and power beyond anything she could ever imagine. But something in her gut told her that this was only the beginning. What she didn't know was that Grant was listening. Even in his comatose state, he could feel her presence, her voice, her touch. It was a connection that neither of them could yet understand, but it was there. And for the first time in a long while, Grant felt something stir inside him. It was faint, like the flutter of a bird's wings, but it was enough to remind him that he wasn't alone. The next morning, as Anna walked into the hospital room, she couldn't help but glance at the monitor. His heart rate was steady, but there was no sign of any improvement. She sighed softly, ready to begin her routine once again. But as she approached his bed, something unexpected happened. His fingers twitched. At first, she thought it was just a reflex, a muscle spasm. But then it happened again. This time, his hand moved slightly, as though reaching out for her. Anna's breath caught in her throat. Was it possible? Could he be waking up? She quickly called for the doctor, her heart pounding in her chest. Moments later, the room was filled with medical staff, their voices overlapping as they rushed to assess the situation. Anna stepped back, her mind racing. She had no idea what was happening, but she knew one thing for sure: things were about to change. Grant's eyes fluttered open, and for the first time in almost a year, he looked at her. His gaze was confused, unfocused, but there was a flicker of recognition there. "Who are you?" His voice was weak, barely audible, but it sent a wave of shock through Anna. She wasn't prepared for this. I'm Anna, she stammered, her heart racing. I'm your nurse. Grant blinked, trying to focus on her face. Nurse, he repeated, as if the word didn't quite make sense to him. Anna felt a lump rise in her throat. It wasn't the answer she was expecting, but it was enough for now. She had been waiting for this moment, but she wasn't ready for it. Yes, she replied softly. I've been taking care of you. You've been in a coma for a while, but you're waking up now. You're going to be okay. But even as she said the words, she wasn't sure if she believed them. Grant's gaze softened, and for a brief moment, their eyes locked. Anna felt a strange connection, as if he could see through her, into the very core of who she was. It was as if he had known her all along, even though she had just met him. It was a feeling that both frightened and exhilarated her. This was just the beginning of their journey, and Anna had no idea where it would take them. But deep down, she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The room was filled with a flurry of activity, doctors and nurses rushing to Grant's side as he regained consciousness. Anna stood back, her heart pounding in her chest, watching as the medical team quickly assessed the situation. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Just moments ago, he had been completely still, his life sustained only by machines. And now, here he was, his eyes open, his chest rising and falling with each shallow breath. She tried to stay calm, but her mind was racing. Was this real? Had he really woken up? Grant's eyes moved slowly, scanning the room, before settling on her. For a brief moment, their gazes locked, and Anna felt something stir inside her, something she hadn't expected. It wasn't just relief. That he was awake, it was something deeper, something that felt personal. Anna. His voice was hoarse, barely a whisper, but it sent a jolt through her body. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. You're awake, she managed, her voice trembling. Grant blinked a few times, his eyes still unfocused. Where am I? He looked around, confusion settling on his face. Anna stepped closer, trying to steady her breath. You're in the hospital, she explained softly. You've been in a coma. For a long time. The words felt strange coming from her mouth, as if she still couldn't fully comprehend the situation. A coma. He repeated the word like it was something he couldn't quite grasp. How long? Anna hesitated. Almost a year. His brow furrowed, as though he was trying to process the information. A year, he murmured. I've lost a year. His voice was filled with disbelief, and for a moment, Anna saw something in his eyes that reminded her of herself, lost, confused, unsure of where to go next. But there was something else there, too. A flicker of recognition. Slowly, his eyes focused on her once more. Thank you, he said quietly. Anna blinked, taken aback by the sincerity in his voice. Thank you for what? She asked, unsure of what he meant. For being here, he replied. I know you've been taking care of me. She swallowed hard, trying to hold herself together. Of course, she said softly, though her heart was racing. She didn't know why she was so affected by his words. After all, she was just doing her job. But there was something about this man, about the way he was looking at her, that made her feel like she was a part of something bigger than herself. The doctors continued to check his vitals, but Anna couldn't tear her gaze away from Grant. She had seen many patients in her time as a nurse, but none had affected her like this. He was different. She knew it. His eyes moved from her to the doctors, his confusion slowly giving way to curiosity. How long until I can leave? He asked, his voice still weak. We'll have to run some tests first, the doctor replied, sounding calm but professional. You've made a remarkable recovery, Mr. Carter, but it will take time before you're fully stable. Grant nodded slowly, his eyes focused on the ceiling now. Anna could see the wheels turning in his mind. He was a man who had built an empire, a man who had controlled everything around him. And now, here he was, completely at the mercy of the very people he used to command. She wondered what that felt like. The nurse inside her wanted to comfort him, to reassure him that everything would be fine. But there was a part of her, a part she hadn't expected, that wanted to know more about him. What was he really like behind the walls of wealth and power? "Anna," Grant said suddenly, his voice steady now, though still a little rough. She turned to him, surprised. "Yes?" "What happens now?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. "What do I do?" Anna swallowed hard, unsure of how to answer. "What did you say to someone who had everything, and yet nothing at all?" "You take it one day at a time," she said softly. "You rest. You heal." He nodded, but she could see the frustration in his eyes. He wasn't used to being told to wait. He was used to taking charge, to being in control. She couldn't blame him. But this was different. This was about survival, about rebuilding something from the ground up. "And what about you?" Grant asked, his voice suddenly softer. "What do you do?" Anna blinked in surprise, not expecting the question. "I do my job," she replied, trying to keep her emotions in check. "I take care of you." His eyes held hers for a long moment, as if searching for something. Anna felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. It was fleeting, but it was enough to make her heart skip a beat. She quickly looked away, clearing her throat. "You should rest," she said gently, not sure what else to say. "I'll be back later." But as she turned to leave, Grant's voice stopped her. "Wait," he said, his voice soft but urgent. Anna turned back, and for the first time since he had woken up, she saw something like vulnerability in his eyes. "Thank you," he said again. "For being here when no one else was." The words caught Anna off guard, and for a moment, she didn't know how to respond. She had expected gratitude, but not like this. This wasn't just about her doing her job. This was about something else, something that she wasn't quite ready to face. She nodded silently, then left the room, her heart heavy with questions she didn't know how to answer. It had been a week since Grant had woken up, and while his physical recovery was progressing, emotionally, he was still distant, still processing the reality of what had happened. Anna had been with him every step of the way, her gentle touch and reassuring presence a constant in the whirlwind of tests and treatments. He could tell that she cared for him, but what he didn't expect was how much she had started to matter to him. Every time she walked into the room, something inside him stirred, a feeling he couldn't quite place. He had built an empire from nothing, but now, lying here in this sterile hospital bed, he realized how much he had lost along the way. His empire, his wealth, his power, they all seemed so insignificant in the face of what really mattered. One night, after another round of tests, Grant was alone in his room, his thoughts racing. The door creaked open, and Anna walked in, her eyes soft with concern. "How are you feeling?" she asked, her voice steady yet kind. "Better," he replied, though the words felt hollow. He wasn't just talking about his body. He was talking about something deeper, something he couldn't put into words. "I'm not sure what to do next," he admitted, looking down at his hands. "I feel like I've been asleep for a lifetime, and now everything's different." Anna walked over to him, placing a hand on the edge of his bed. "You take it one step at a time," she said gently. "That's all anyone can do." He nodded, grateful for her calmness. But there was something else he wanted to say, something that had been on his mind since he woke up. "Anna," he began, his voice low. She met his gaze, her eyes filled with quiet understanding. "You've been here for me. You've cared for me when no one else would. I don't know why, but I feel like I owe you something. More than just gratitude." Anna's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him to say anything like this. "You don't owe me anything," she replied softly, though the words felt inadequate. It wasn't just about what he owed her. It was about the connection they shared. It was about the way his presence had started to affect her in ways she hadn't anticipated. She had come into this job just trying to get by, but now, it felt like everything had changed. "But I do," Grant insisted, his voice filled with sincerity. I know I'm just a patient to you, but you've made me feel like I'm something more. Something worth saving. Anna felt a lump form in her throat. She had heard those words from patients before, but never like this. Never from someone who had everything, who had lost it all and still found a reason to keep fighting. I'm just doing my job, she whispered, but the words felt hollow. She wanted to say more. She wanted to tell him how much his words meant to her, but she couldn't. It was too soon. Too complicated. Grant looked at her for a long moment, his eyes searching hers, and for a brief second, she thought he might say something else. But he didn't. Instead, he reached out, taking her hand in his. His grip was weak, but there was something comforting in the touch. I don't know what the future holds, but I want you to know that you've made a difference in my life, he said quietly. Anna's breath caught in her chest. She didn't know how to respond, but somehow she didn't need to. His words, his touch, they spoke volumes. He wasn't just a patient anymore. He wasn't just the man who had everything. He was a man who had found something worth living for. And for the first time in a long while, Anna felt like she had found something worth believing in too. As the days passed, their bond grew stronger. They shared quiet conversations, moments of laughter, and even some silences that felt comfortable. Anna knew she was doing her job, but she also knew that something was changing inside her. She was starting to see Grant not just as the man in the bed, but as a person, as someone who had a past, a story, a future. And the more she got to know him, the more she realized that he wasn't just the billionaire CEO she had read about in the tabloids. He was someone who had lost his way, but was finding his way back, one step at a time. One night, after a long day of physical therapy, Grant looked at Anna with a serious expression. I want to make a promise to you, he said, his voice steady. Anna raised an eyebrow, unsure of what he meant. What kind of promise? She asked cautiously. That when I'm fully recovered, Grant said, I'll do everything I can to give back. Not just to the world, but to you. For everything you've done for me. Anna felt her heart swell. It wasn't about money or fame. It was about the gesture, the sincerity in his words. You don't have to do that, she said, her voice soft. I'm just doing what I was trained to do. Grant smiled, but there was a sadness in his eyes. Maybe. But sometimes, doing the right thing means something more. Anna looked away, unsure of how to respond. She didn't want to admit how much she wanted to believe that. How much she wanted to believe in him, in them. But there was still so much uncertainty, so many questions. She took a deep breath, pushing the thoughts away. We'll take it one day at a time, she said softly. That's all we can do. And as she walked out of his room that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that their story had only just begun. It had been 2 weeks since Grant had woken up, and though his physical recovery was progressing faster than expected, Anna could tell that he was struggling with the emotional toll of everything that had happened. She had been by his side every day, helping him with his physical therapy, making sure he was comfortable, but now, she felt like she was beginning to see another side of him, a side that wasn't just the CEO, the billionaire who could have everything at his fingertips, but a man who was learning how to live again. That morning, as Anna entered his room, she found him staring out the window, his back to her. She quietly approached, unsure of how to start the day. How are you feeling? She asked softly. Grant turned slowly, and for the first time in days, he gave her a genuine smile. Better, he said, though his eyes betrayed a quiet sadness. Physically, I mean. But inside. He trailed off, his voice heavy with unspoken words. Anna paused, sensing the shift in his mood. Inside? She asked, stepping closer to him. What do you mean? He sighed deeply, rubbing his hand over his face. I've been thinking a lot about what happens next. I've spent my whole life building this empire, running businesses, making deals. But now, it feels like everything has stopped. I don't know who I am anymore. Anna watched him closely, her heart aching at the vulnerability he was showing. She had seen him as a man who was strong, self-assured, and powerful, but now, she saw someone who was trying to rebuild not just his body, but his life. She could relate more than he realized. "You don't have to have everything figured out right away," Anna said softly, her voice reassuring. "Sometimes, it's okay to take a step back and just breathe." Grant met her gaze, his expression thoughtful. "I don't know if I can just breathe, Anna. I spent my whole life focused on building something, but now I'm not even sure what that something is." There was a long pause before Anna spoke again, her voice gentle. "What if what you've been building isn't just about the empire, but about the people around you? What if it's about connecting with others, about love, and about finding meaning in something bigger than just business?" Grant looked at her, his brow furrowed, as though he hadn't thought of it that way. "I'm not sure what you mean," he admitted. Anna smiled softly, stepping closer to him. "I think, what I'm trying to say is that maybe it's not about fixing everything all at once. Maybe it's about taking small steps. One day at a time." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "And maybe it's about finding peace in the connections you make along the way." Grant was silent for a long moment, his eyes searching hers. "You really believe that, don't you?" he asked quietly. Anna nodded, her heart racing at the intensity of his gaze. "I do," she said simply. "I think sometimes, the hardest thing to do is to let go of the past and just live in the present." Grant's expression softened, and for a brief moment, Anna thought she saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," he admitted. "But I want to try. I want to find a way to move forward." Anna smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. "That's all anyone can do," she said. "Take it one step at a time." Over the next few days, Anna noticed a subtle shift in Grant. He was still focused on his recovery, still unsure of what the future held, but there was a lightness to him now, a willingness to engage, to open up. He began to share more about his past, about his ambitions, about the mistakes he had made. And though it wasn't easy for him, Anna could see that he was slowly beginning to find peace with his situation. One evening, after his therapy session, Grant surprised her by asking if she wanted to go for a walk outside. "I think I need a change of scenery," he said, his voice tentative. Anna hesitated but agreed, feeling the urge to help him find a sense of normalcy. They walked through the hospital grounds, the cool evening air refreshing against their skin. Grant kept his hands stuffed in his pockets, but his shoulders were a little more relaxed, a little less tense. "I've never really taken the time to just be outside," he admitted as they strolled through the quiet path. "I was always so focused on the next big thing, the next deal, the next step. But now, it feels different. I want to slow down. I want to actually live." Anna smiled softly. "It's never too late to start living," she said, her voice warm. "You're already on the right path." Grant glanced at her, his expression softening. "I don't know what the future holds, Anna. But I'm starting to believe that maybe it's okay to let go of the past and just be present." For the first time since he had woken up, Grant seemed at peace, and Anna realized that, in some small way, he was healing, not just physically, but emotionally too. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but they had both taken the first step toward something better. Anna couldn't help but wonder if, somehow, they were both saving each other, one small step at a time. It had been a few weeks since Grant had started to open up, and Anna could see the change in him, even though he didn't always acknowledge it. He had spent so much of his life in control, commanding his empire, and now, it was as if he was learning how to regain control of himself. Each day, his strength seemed to grow, not just physically, but emotionally too. He was starting to reconnect with the world around him, and with her. One evening, after his therapy, he surprised Anna once again. "I've been thinking," he said as they sat in the quiet hospital courtyard, "about the things I've missed. About the life I've been living for the past year, or maybe longer." Anna watched him closely, waiting for him to continue. "I've spent so much time chasing things, chasing success, that I've forgotten what it means to live. To actually feel alive." His voice was soft, almost as if he were speaking to himself more than to her. Anna's heart tightened at his words. It's never too late to start, she replied, her voice steady, though there was a warmth in her tone that she hadn't meant to show. She hadn't realized until now how much his journey had begun to feel like her own. She had been running from her past too, hiding behind the routine of caring for others, never allowing herself to think about what she truly wanted. "You're already living, Grant," she said, her voice soft but sure. "Every step you take from here is part of your life. You don't need to go back to who you were. You just need to be who you are now." Grant turned to face her, his eyes searching hers. "Who am I now, Anna?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She smiled, trying to calm the flutter in her chest. "You're someone who's learning to live again," she said, "someone who's finding peace with who they are." He nodded slowly, his gaze softening. "And what about you?" he asked quietly, his eyes never leaving hers. "What about me?" she replied, caught off guard. Grant reached for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "What do you want, Anna?" he asked, his voice filled with a sincerity that caught her off guard. She swallowed hard, unsure how to answer. What did she want? She had never allowed herself to think about that question. Her whole life had been about taking care of others, about doing what was expected of her. But in that moment, with Grant holding her hand, she realized something. "I want to help you," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "But I also want to find my own path." Grant's eyes softened. "You already are, Anna. You're here with me. You're finding your way." He paused for a moment, as if thinking deeply. "And I want to help you find your way too." Anna felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words, a sense of connection she hadn't expected. It was more than just gratitude, it was something deeper, something that neither of them had anticipated when their journey had begun. Over the next few days, they continued to talk, to share more of themselves with each other. They talked about their dreams, their regrets, and the things that made them who they were. For Anna, it was as though a weight had been lifted. She had spent so long hiding behind her role as a nurse, as someone who was always taking care of others, that she had never really allowed herself to think about what she needed, what she wanted. And with Grant, she found herself beginning to understand that it was okay to be vulnerable, to have desires and needs of her own. One evening, after another therapy session, Grant asked her to join him for dinner outside the hospital. It was a simple gesture, but for Anna, it felt like the first real step in their new connection. They sat at a small, quiet cafe near the hospital, the soft hum of conversation around them. Grant looked more relaxed than he had in weeks, his usual sharpness replaced by a calm, almost peaceful demeanor. "I'm still figuring it out," he said, his voice thoughtful. "But I'm learning to take it one day at a time." Anna smiled at him, feeling a warmth in her heart that she hadn't felt in a long time. "I think we're both learning that," she said. "That life is about the small moments, the connections we make." Grant reached across the table, taking her hand in his once again. "You've taught me a lot, Anna," he said softly. "I don't think I ever truly understood what it meant to live, to really live. But now, I think I'm starting to get it." Anna looked down at their joined hands, a sense of peace settling over her. She didn't have all the answers. She didn't know what the future held for either of them. But in that moment, she realized that she didn't need to know. All that mattered was that they were both here, together, taking it one step at a time. As they sat there, talking and laughing under the soft glow of the cafe lights, Anna felt something shift inside her. For the first time in years, she felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. And for the first time in a long time, she realized that maybe, just maybe, life had something beautiful in store for her too. It had been a few more weeks since that quiet dinner at the cafe, and Grant's progress had continued, both physically and emotionally. He was becoming more involved in his recovery, but there was something else at play. He was starting to redefine who he was outside of his empire. He had always been driven by success, by the need to prove himself, but now, he was learning to value something far deeper, human connection. Anna watched the transformation in him with a mix of admiration and awe. She had been part of his healing journey from the beginning, but as time passed, she found herself wondering about her own path, her own future. Was she just a nurse, or was she something more? And was it possible that her role in Grant's life was becoming something bigger than just a professional connection? She wasn't sure yet, but she felt the pull, the spark between them that had grown into something undeniable. One afternoon, Grant sat by the window of his room, looking out at the city beyond. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow across the skyline. He had been quiet all day, lost in thought. Anna entered the room with a tray of food, noticing his pensive expression. "You okay?" she asked softly, setting the tray down on the table. Grant turned to look at her, his eyes a little distant. "I'm fine," he said, though his tone didn't quite match the words. "Just thinking." Anna sat down across from him, studying his face. She could tell he was holding something back. "About what?" she asked gently. Grant sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. "I've been thinking a lot about my life, about all the things I've done, the people I've hurt, the things I've lost. I spent so much time building this empire, but I've neglected the things that really matter. The people I care about. The relationships that could have meant something." Anna's heart ached as she listened to him. She had always known that Grant was more than just his wealth and success, but hearing him admit it out loud, to face his own regrets, was something else entirely. "You can't change the past," she said softly, "but you can start fresh. Every day is a new chance." Grant looked at her, his expression softening. "I know," he said quietly. "But it's hard. It feels like there's so much I have to make up for." Anna reached out, placing a hand on his. "You don't have to make up for anything, Grant. You just have to keep moving forward, one step at a time." Grant's eyes met hers, and for a long moment, they simply stared at each other, the weight of their shared silence speaking volumes. Finally, he spoke. "I don't know what the future holds, Anna. But I do know that I want you in it. I want you to be a part of my life, in whatever way that looks like." Anna's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected him to say that, not like this. "Grant," she began, her voice trembling, "I'm just here to help you heal." "I never imagined," he interrupted her gently, his thumb brushing over her hand. "I know what you're saying, and I don't expect anything. But I've realized that you've become someone important to me. More than just a nurse. I can't explain it, but I don't want to lose that." Anna felt her heart race, the words she had been holding back threatening to spill out. She had grown so close to him, but she had never allowed herself to fully acknowledge how much she had started to care. She had always kept a wall up, protecting herself from anything too personal, too deep. But now, looking at Grant, she knew it was time to stop hiding. "I care about you, Grant," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what this is, but I don't want to run from it anymore." Grant's eyes lit up, a smile breaking across his face, and for the first time in a long while, Anna saw a genuine happiness in him. "You don't have to run," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." The words hung in the air. Between them, a promise, a beginning. As the days passed, their connection deepened. They shared quiet moments, laughter, and even a few tears. Anna was still his nurse, still there to help him heal, but now, it felt like something more. She was no longer just the person taking care of him, she was someone he trusted, someone who had become integral to his life. Grant, for his part, was opening up more than he ever had before. He was no longer the CEO who had buried himself in work and ambition. He was a man learning to live again, to reconnect with the things that truly mattered. And Anna was there, every step of the way, helping him rediscover what it meant to feel alive. One evening, as they sat together in the hospital garden, the city lights twinkling in the distance, Grant turned to her. "Do you ever think about the future?" he asked quietly. Anna smiled, looking out at the horizon. "Sometimes," she said, "but I try not to worry about it too much. I've learned that the best way to live is to take it one day at a time." Grant nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "One day at a time," he repeated, as if the words had a new meaning for him now. "That's something I can get behind." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the cool evening breeze rustling the leaves around them. For the first time in a long while, Anna felt at peace. She didn't have all the answers, and neither did Grant, but together, they were figuring it out. One step at a time. It had been a month since that quiet moment in the hospital garden, and life seemed to be moving in a different rhythm for both Anna and Grant. He was still recovering physically, but it was his emotional journey that seemed to be taking center stage. The more time they spent together, the more Anna realized how much he had changed, not just from his physical injury, but from the awakening that had come with it. For the first time in years, he was starting to see the world outside of his empire, outside of the boardrooms and the cold business meetings. It was a side of him that Anna was beginning to love. They had come so far, and yet, there was still so much to discover about each other. It was like they were both starting a new chapter of their lives, a chapter they had never expected to write. One afternoon, as they sat in his private room, Grant turned to Anna with a serious expression. He had been quieter than usual, his gaze distant. "Anna," he began, his voice low, "I've been thinking about the future. About what comes next for me, for us." Anna looked at him, feeling her heart rate quicken. She hadn't expected him to ask about the future yet. They had been taking things one day at a time, focusing on the present, but now, it seemed like he was ready to look ahead. "What do you mean?" she asked gently, her voice barely above a whisper. Grant sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know I've said this before, but I'm still figuring it out. I'm trying to understand who I am outside of all this." He waved a hand vaguely, as if to gesture to his wealth, his career, the life he had built. "And I don't want to rush anything, but I think about you. About us." Anna's breath caught in her throat. She had been trying to keep her emotions in check, trying not to get too attached, but hearing him say that, hearing him acknowledge what had been growing between them, made her heart swell. "Grant," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I never imagined things would be like this, but I'm not in any rush either. I'm just here, with you, right now." Grant smiled softly, his eyes filled with something she couldn't quite read. It was warmth, tenderness, but also uncertainty. "I don't want to pressure you, Anna," he said, his voice low and sincere. "But I also don't want to lose you. I've been through a lot, and I don't know where this journey is going, but I want you in it." Anna felt her heart swell at his words, but at the same time, she felt a pang of fear. She had spent so many years guarding her heart, afraid of letting anyone in, but with Grant, it felt different. "I'm right here, Grant," she said softly, her hand reaching for his. "I'm not going anywhere. I care about you, and I want to see where this goes. But we have time. We have time to figure it out." He nodded, his eyes softening as he looked at her. "You're right," he agreed. "We have time." The weeks that followed were filled with more moments of connection. They shared more conversations, more quiet evenings together. Grant was still figuring things out, but Anna could see the change in him every day. He was learning to be present, to embrace the small moments, and to let go of the past. One evening, after a particularly long day of therapy, Grant turned to Anna as they were walking down the hospital hallway. "Anna," he said, his voice serious, "I want to thank you for everything. I know I've said it before, but I don't think I've ever truly expressed how much you've helped me. Not just physically, but emotionally. You've been more than a nurse to me." Anna stopped in her tracks, her heart racing. "Grant," she said, her voice quiet but filled with emotion, "I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. I care about you, that's all." He reached out, taking her hand gently. "I know," he said softly. "But you've done more than just care for me. You've helped me find myself again. You've given me hope when I didn't have any." Anna's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, she didn't know what to say. She had never allowed herself to truly open up to anyone, and yet here she was, standing in front of a man who had touched her in a way no one else had. "I don't know what the future holds," Grant continued, "but I do know that I want you by my side." Anna felt a lump form in her throat, and she squeezed his hand in return. "I want that too," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. They stood there for a moment, the world around them fading into the background as they shared a quiet, intimate connection. It was as if time had stopped, and all that mattered was the two of them, standing together in that moment. The path ahead was uncertain, and neither of them had all the answers, but in that moment, they both knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. It was the first time in a long while that Anna felt at peace, knowing that she didn't have to have everything figured out. The journey was just beginning, and that was enough. It had been 2 months since Grant had started to fully embrace his recovery, and both he and Anna had changed in ways they couldn't have predicted. Every day, they shared more moments of clarity, moments of laughter, and sometimes silence, but always together. For the first time, Anna allowed herself to think about her future without the fear of what could go wrong. She had always hidden behind her work, behind the comfort of routine, but now, something was different. She was starting to believe in the possibility of a life that was not just about surviving, but truly living. It was a slow process for both of them, but it felt like they were both walking toward something, hand in hand, in their own time. One evening, after another long day of therapy, Grant and Anna sat in the quiet hospital courtyard once again, the sun beginning to set, casting a soft glow on the world around them. They hadn't spoken much that evening, but there was an understanding between them, a comfort in each other's presence. Grant broke the silence. "Anna, I've been thinking," he started, his voice steady, but there was something new in it, a sense of purpose. "About everything we've been through, and what comes next." Anna turned to face him, her heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked softly, her curiosity piqued. He smiled faintly, but there was a certain seriousness to his expression now. "I think I've figured out something important." He paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "For the longest time, I've been so focused on my business, on building something that mattered, but I've neglected the one thing that really does matter. The people. The relationships. You've taught me that, Anna. You've shown me that life isn't just about achievements or wealth, it's about the connections we make with others, the love we give and receive." Anna felt a lump form in her throat. She hadn't expected him to say something like that. She knew he had been changing, but hearing him admit how much he had learned, how much he had grown, touched her deeply. "Grant," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I've seen it in you. I've seen you change. And I've changed too." She hesitated for a moment, wondering if she should say what had been on her mind for days now. But in that moment, she knew she couldn't hold it back any longer. "I've been so afraid of letting myself truly care, of letting anyone get too close. But with you, it feels different. You make me want to take that leap, to believe that maybe love isn't just something that happens to other people, but something we can both choose, together." Grant's eyes softened as he listened to her, and for a moment, he didn't say anything. He just reached out and gently took her hand in his. "I want that too," he said quietly. "I want to build something real, something that matters, not just for me, but for us. Together." Anna felt her heart swell as she looked into his eyes. This wasn't just about recovery anymore, this was about a future they could create, a future filled with possibilities they hadn't allowed themselves to see before. The air between them seemed to shift, and for the first time, there was no hesitation. They were ready to face whatever came next. "So what do we do now?" Anna asked, her voice trembling slightly, but with excitement this time. Grant smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes and lit up his entire face. "We start fresh," he said. "One day at a time, just like we've been doing. But this time, we do it together." Anna squeezed his hand, her heart full. She had never thought that a journey of healing could lead to something so beautiful, but here they were, standing on the threshold of something new, something meaningful. It didn't matter that neither of them had all the answers, or that the future was still uncertain. What mattered was that they were in this together, and that was enough. Over the next few weeks, they began to build that future, one step at a time. They took small trips together, spent quiet evenings talking about their hopes and dreams, and began to slowly piece together the life they wanted to create. Grant still had a long way to go in his recovery, and Anna had her own journey to figure out, but they were no longer afraid to face the challenges ahead. They knew they could do it, as long as they had each other. One evening, as they sat together in the same hospital courtyard where it all began, Grant turned to Anna with a soft smile. "I never thought I'd get to this point," he said quietly. "But I'm glad I'm here with you." Anna smiled back, her heart full. "Me too, Grant," she replied, "me too." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the world around them, Anna realized that sometimes, the most beautiful things happen when you stop running from what you're afraid of, and start taking it one step at a time, together. Months had passed since that evening in the hospital courtyard, and Grant's recovery had progressed beyond anyone's expectations. He was walking again, stronger each day, and more importantly, he had regained something even more precious, his sense of purpose. Anna had been by his side the entire time, not just as a nurse, but as someone who had become an irreplaceable part of his life. They had been through so much together, and their bond had only grown deeper. They had become a team, in every sense of the word. One morning, as the sun filtered through the hospital window, casting a warm glow over the room, Grant turned to Anna with a smile. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice steady and calm. "It's time for me to get back to the world. To start rebuilding, to make something meaningful out of everything I've learned." Anna looked at him, a soft smile tugging at her lips. "You've already started rebuilding, Grant," she said. What we've built together, it's the most important thing." Grant nodded, his gaze softening as he took her hand in his. "I know," he said quietly. "But I want to do more. I want to give back, to help others the way you've helped me." Anna's heart swelled at his words. She had always believed that healing was about more than just fixing broken bodies, it was about touching lives, about making a difference. And now, here was Grant, someone who had once been untouchable, someone who had known only success and power, learning what it meant to truly give. "I think that's a beautiful idea," Anna said, her voice full of warmth. "But remember, Grant, you don't have to do it all at once. Start small. Just take one step at a time, like we did." Grant smiled at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You're right," he said softly. One step at a time. As the days passed, Grant began to make plans for his future. He started a foundation focused on giving back to the community, something he had always dreamed of doing but had never had the time or the right motivation for. He worked closely with Anna, who had become not only his confidant but his greatest supporter. They made decisions together, built programs that would change lives, and as they did, their bond grew even stronger. There were moments when the weight of his past threatened to pull him back, but with Anna by his side, he learned how to move forward, how to embrace the future rather than dwell on the past. And through it all, their connection never wavered. They were partners in every sense of the word, and as they built a new life together, they knew they had created something far more valuable than anything either of them had imagined. One evening, months later, as the two of them sat on the balcony of Grant's new apartment, the city lights sparkling below them, Grant turned to Anna. "I never thought I would be here," he said, his voice filled with quiet wonder. "I thought my life was always going to be about the next deal, the next success. But now, I see that the most important thing I've done is build a life with you." Anna smiled, her heart full. "We've built something beautiful," she said softly. "And it's just the beginning." Grant reached out, taking her hand in his. "I know," he said, his voice filled with determination. "I want to spend the rest of my life making a difference. And I want you by my side, every step of the way." Anna looked at him, her heart racing. She had never imagined that this life they had built, could be hers. But now, as she looked into Grant's eyes, she knew that they had created something far beyond their wildest dreams. They had created a life of love, of purpose, of healing, and together, they would face whatever came next. "I'm with you, Grant," she whispered, her voice full of promise. "I always will be." And as they stood together, hand in hand, watching the city below, they knew that the journey ahead would be just as beautiful as the one that had brought them here. They had found their way, not through the power of wealth or success, but through love and the healing power of being truly seen. It wasn't the life they had expected, but it was the one they had always needed. And together, they knew they could face anything, one step at a time.